To have some items below our summary card, I'll first of all add a sized box with a height of 10 to have some spacing. And then add a list view here, which should render all the items in our card. Now you learned that a list view directly inside of a column doesn't work, but all we have to do is wrap it with an expanded widget, which ensures that we take as much space as is left in this column instead of as much space as you can get, and then use our list view in here. Now we could have an infinite amount of card items, so I'll use list view builder here to build this for potential performance improvements. And as you learned, that takes two important things, the item count and the item builder. Now the item count needs to know how many items we have in our card. Conveniently, I have access to the card here, thanks to provider auth. So down there, we just need card.item count. And the way I set this up, this simply gives us the amount of items. If you used a different logic here, where you summed up the quantities, then of course you can't use your item count getter, and instead here you would have to use items length, right? So that is in the end the logic you want to have here, items length. Now besides the item count, we need the item builder, which builds us the list entries here, and there we get context and we get the index, and we need to return the widget that should be built for every item in the card. Now we could do this inline, but just as with the product item in the product grid, I'll add a card item dart file in the widgets folder, and in there create a new stateless widget, which is our card item, and that's the item I want to build. So for that, let's import material dart from the Flutter package, and let's now define how such a card item should look like. As always, your imagination is the limit here. You can build this however you want. I will simply create a couple of cards. So every card item will be in a card. Around that card, I want to have some margin. And now here I'll use a symmetric margin distribution, which means I want to have different margins left and right and top and bottom. So horizontally, I want to have a margin of 15, which matches the margin I set up for my summary card up there in the card screen. And vertically, I want to have a margin of only 4, so between my different card items now. Now the child in that card will be a padding, so to set up some padding inside of the card, where I use edge insets all 8. And then the child of the padding is the actual content for each card item. And there I'll simply use a list tile, but of course you can use any widget or any structure you want there. You can build your own row, column, container, whatever you need. Here in my list tile, at the beginning I want to have the sum for this card item we're displaying. And I want to display one list item for every product we have in the card and then show its price and its quantity. So here I'll use a circle avatar again to display the information about the price with an escaped $sign and then some interpolation. And now that's simply some data which I expect to get in this card item. There we'll need a couple of pieces of information. We'll need to get the ID of that card item. We'll need to get the price. We'll need to get the quantity, and we'll probably also need the title of the product. So card item will of course have a constructor, again with named or positional arguments, where all these things, all these pieces of information need to be provided. And I'm going with a positional constructor here. Now with this configured down there, I of course simply want to refer to my price. And therefore, since it's only one word, we don't need the curly braces. And toString is called automatically there. Now as a title, I want to show the title of the product. So another text widget where I simply refer to title. And as subtitle, we could calculate a total price, which automatically is quantity times the price. So we could have a text in here where we say total, then an escape $sign to really print a $sign. And then with string interpolation, calculate the total amount for this item. And that will simply be the price times the quantity, right? Let's wrap this into parentheses here. And last but not least, as a trailing element here, I'll just output the quantity we have so that we can also see that. Another text widget where I simply want to output the quantity and then an X to show it as a multiplicator sign. So this is how a card item could look like, how my card item will look like. In a card screen, we can now use that. So in card screen, let's import from the widgets folder the card item Dart file. And with that imported, it's the card item I want to return in the builder down there. So in the item builder here, we can return the card item. And of course, we now have to pass all that data into card item, which we are expecting there. So ID, price, quantity, and title. That is what we expect here. That is what we need to pass in. Of course, you could now also set up a provider for every card item if that would be a standalone listenable provided class in your app, which it isn't for me. Card item here doesn't have a change notifier. We could, of course, provide it without that, but don't really need to do that, actually. I'm fine with having my card item, which simply receives the data I want to pass in here. Because here in card screen, of course, we do have our card, and there we do have the card items. And therefore, in here, I can simply pass in card items for the given index .id. And then repeat the same for the, what's the second thing? Card item takes the price, quantity, and title. So price, quantity, title. So here I can then access the price and then also card items, quantity, and last but not least, the title. Now we have one issue here. Card item is now a name I use twice. Here in the card Dart file in providers, I have a card item class. And here in the card item Dart file, I also have a card item class. Now in my card screen, I'm importing both. I'm importing my provider's card Dart file, which has one card item, and I'm importing my card item Dart file, which has the other one. Now in such cases, there are a couple of solutions. You could add as here and name this CI, for example, and that would be a prefix which you could now use. So now you would use here ci.cardItem, and now Dart would be able to know from which file you want to use card item. So using a prefix is one option. Or maybe you only need one feature of a file in another file, and that's the case here. From card Dart, I'm not interested in the card item in my card screen. Instead, in the card screen, I'm only interested in the card class, which is part of the card Dart file. Oh man, that are many cards. But I'm only interested in this class here, in my card Dart file, in the card screen file. So here we can use the show keyword, and then let Dart know that we're only interested here in card. And it won't import the card item from the card Dart file, and therefore it will only import it from the card item Dart file, and we avoid that name clash. With that, let's do a full refresh. And let's see whether that works. Let's add the trousers and the red shirt to the card. Go to the card screen. And I get an error. The getter ID was called a null. Now the total seems to be good, but what's wrong with the ID here, which I execute on card items? It's a subtle error, and it's related to the fact that card items here, of course, refers to our map, right? In the card class, items, which we return here with the items getter, is a map. Now here I'm actually interested in the values which are stored in that map. Hence here on card items you can access a values property, which gives you an iterable, which you can convert to a list. And now that's actually the list of values we need here, on which we can then access the ith element. So that's actually what I want to extract here. Values to list on my card items so that I operate on, well, a list of values so that I only work with the concrete values stored in the map. And now there I'll then have ID and so on available. So with that, if we go back to the app and we now start adding items to the cart again, now we can see them here. Now to fit the labels or the prices here into our circle avatars. Let's go to the card item, to the widget there. And then in circle avatar, we can of course wrap that text with fitted box, which should ensure that this actually fits in there. So now if I add a couple of items to the cart, this looks better. And now we are squeezing this into our circle avatar. We can also see here, we see the individual price. Here we see the sum, the title, the quantity. That looks decent to me. Obviously, you can always fine-tune this to your likings. I'm happy with this. Maybe we add some padding around this text here. So around that fitted box, let's add a new widget padding here with padding set to edge insets all 10 maybe, or I think that's too much. Let's go with 5. And now if we give that a try, yeah, now it looks even better. So now we have this setup here, which works for me. Let's next make sure that we can actually also swipe here to remove items from the card.